Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you love captivating stories about men transforming into women in unique and fascinating ways, then be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Now, let's jump right into today's tale.
Chapter 10, Breaking the Distance. Evening settled over the lake, turning the water to liquid silver as the sun dipped behind the forested hills surrounding Konoha. Saruto and Sasuke still sat side by side on the flat rock that had served as their perch for what felt like hours, their joined hands resting between them like a bridge spanning two lands. The transformation of day into dusk mirrored the subtle shift that had occurred between them. Something fundamental had changed. Boundaries were drawn, possibilities opened where walls had stood before. The air was thick with things unsaid. Hopes, fears, new desires neither had the training to fight. Shinobi academies taught countless ways to resist torture, to break genjutsu, to withstand physical pain, but nothing in their education had prepared them for this quiet revolution of the heart. A gentle breeze played with Saruto's hair, sending pink strands dancing across her face in a teasing caress. It carried the scent of spring, new grass, wildflowers, the mineral tang of the lake, and something sharper, like ozone before a storm, that electric potential of change. She found herself glancing repeatedly at Sasuke's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the slight furrow between his brows, the curve of his mouth that so rarely smiled. His features were so familiar after years of friendship and rivalry, yet from this new vantage, through these borrowed eyes, he seemed impossibly mysterious, a landscape she thought she knew revealed in different light. He was silent, his gaze fixed on the darkening horizon, but his thumb traced lazy circles across the back of her hand, sending shivers up her arm that radiated outward through her borrowed form. The sensation was different from anything her male body had experienced, more diffuse, more connected to her core, warmth spiraling through her in patterns she couldn't predict or control. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but weighted with potential. Saruto felt the words building in her chest, characteristic impatience warring with new caution. Finally, unable to bear the quiet any longer, she tried to break the tension with a joke. "You know, if anyone saw us like this, they'd probably faint, or start taking bets." Her voice came out lighter than intended, the feminine timbre still occasionally startling her after days in this form. I can picture Kakashi-sensei now, casually dropping odds while pretending to read his book. Sasuke's mouth twitched in a half-smile, the expression transforming his usually severe features. "Let them," he replied, the simple statement carrying surprising conviction. "I'm tired of pretending I don't care what people think." The admission, so unlike the aloof, indifferent Sasuke who had spent years cultivating an image of perfect detachment, made Saruto's heart pound, its rhythm faster and lighter in this female chest. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, another of those autonomic responses this body seemed so prone to. "You never used to care what anyone thought," she said, the observation both question and accusation. "That was kind of your whole thing. The Great Sasuk Uchiha, too good for mere mortal opinions." He turned to her then, abandoning his contemplation of the horizon. His eyes were dark and intent, no Sharingan or Rinnegan activated, just his natural gaze stripped of defenses. "Except you." Those two words, delivered without artifice or hesitation, hit Saruto with physical force. She went still, caught in his gaze like an insect in amber. The space between them seemed impossibly small and yet vast. One breath, one word, one heartbeat separated them from something irrevocable. "That's not true," she whispered, needing to challenge him even now, even with her pulse racing and her skin tingling with awareness. "You left. You fought against us. You nearly," she broke off, memories of lightning chakra and desperate battles flashing through her mind. "I always cared what you thought," Sasuke countered, his voice low and intense. "Why do you think I tried so hard to break our connection? It was the only way I could do what I believed necessary." His hand tightened around hers, the pressure just short of painful. "Your opinion mattered too much. It made me weak." "And now?" Saruto asked, hardly daring to breathe. "Now I'm tired of fighting it." Sasuke leaned in slightly, closing the distance between them by inches. "Tired of denying what's been there from the beginning." Saruto felt dizzy, overwhelmed by his proximity and the implications of his words. This feeling, this swooping, falling sensation in her stomach, this tightness in her chest, was both new and achingly familiar. Her body might be different, but the emotions rising within her transcended physical form. Sasuk reached up, hesitating just shy of touching her face, his usually confident movements uncertain. "You're not afraid?" he asked, the question carrying layers of meaning. She swallowed, mouth suddenly dry. "I am," she admitted, honesty compelled by the vulnerability he was showing. "But not of you." His hand came up to cup her cheek, palm warm against her skin, and the world narrowed to that point of contact. Everything else, the lake, the emerging stars, the distant sounds of the village, faded into insignificance compared to the warmth of his palm, the tilt of his head, the way his lips hovered just inches from hers, waiting, asking, not demanding. "This changes everything," he murmured, his breath warm against her lips. She closed her eyes and whispered, heart hammering so hard she was certain he must feel it echoing through her entire body. "Don't stop." Their lips met tentative at first, a question and an answer all at once. The kiss was soft, searching, nothing like the accidental collision they'd shared as children, nothing like anything Naruto had experienced before. Saruto felt herself melt into it, her hand coming up to rest against Sasuk's chest. Through the thin fabric of his shirt, she could feel his heartbeat, quick and uncertain, matching the rapid flutter of her own. The sensation was overwhelming: soft pressure, gentle heat, the faint taste of tea, and something uniquely Sasuk. Her borrowed body responded with a cascade of sensations. Tingles spreading outward from her lips, warmth pooling low in her abdomen, a shiver that seemed to dance along every nerve ending. Where male Naruto might have experienced desire as a concentrated, localized response, female Saruto felt it as a full-body wave, washing over her from head to toe. He drew back just enough to look into her eyes, his own wide with something like wonder. "You're full of surprises, Saruto," he said, voice rougher than usual, with an edge of vulnerability she'd rarely heard from him. She smiled, dizzy and giddy, feeling lighter than air yet somehow more grounded than she'd ever been. "I could say the same about you. Who knew the ice prince of Konoha could actually thaw?" A flicker of amusement crossed his features. "Only for the right person," he replied, and there was something in his tone, a knowing quality, a hint of recognition, that made her wonder exactly how much he had guessed about her true identity. Before she could analyze it further, he kissed her again, deeper this time, one hand sliding to the nape of her neck while the other remained firmly clasped in hers. This kiss held less hesitation, as if crossing the initial boundary had released something in both of them. She pressed closer, drinking in the sensation, the warmth, the taste, the dizzying rightness of it. For a moment, everything else faded. The village with its expectations and gossip, the secrets she was keeping, the doubts about her future in this form. It was just them, two souls colliding in the growing dark, Sasuke and Saruto, or perhaps something deeper than names could capture, something that had always existed between them regardless of form or circumstance. When they finally parted, both breathless, Sasuke rested his forehead against hers, their noses touching, sharing the same air. In the fading light, his eyes looked almost vulnerable, stripped of their usual guardedness. "Whatever happens next," he began, then paused, seeming to search for the right words, so unlike his usual confident declarations. "Promise me you won't run away." The request carried weight, acknowledgement of their shared history of abandonment and return, of bonds broken and reformed. It wasn't just about this moment, this new connection. It was about everything that had come before and everything that might follow. Saruto shook her head slightly, their foreheads still touching, her eyes shining with emotion she didn't try to hide. "Not a chance," she whispered fiercely. "Not anymore." The promise was Naruto's as much as Saruto's, a vow that transcended her current form, reaching back to the child who had chased his friend across continents and forward to whatever future awaited them. Sasuke's expression softened, the tension in his shoulders easing visibly. He brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, his thumb lingering on her cheekbone, tracing its delicate curve with a gentleness few would believe him capable of. "Good," he murmured, the single word carrying the weight of years of isolation. "Because I'm not letting go." The declaration hung in the air between them, simple yet profound. From Sasuke, who had spent a lifetime pushing people away, severing connections, denying his need for human closeness. It was nothing short of revolutionary. Saruto felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, another of those physical responses that seemed to come more easily to this female form. "I didn't know you could be like this," she admitted, voice slightly wobbly. "So human," Sasuke suggested, with a flash of self-deprecation that was new and strangely endearing. "Open," she corrected, reaching up to touch his face, mirroring his gesture. The skin of his cheek was surprisingly soft beneath her fingertips, contrasting with the faint roughness of stubble along his jaw. "Like you're actually letting someone see you." He turned his face slightly, pressing a kiss to her palm in a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. "Maybe I needed to see myself differently first," he said quietly. "Or maybe I just needed the right mirror." The metaphor lingered between them, layered with meanings neither fully articulated. Saruto wondered how much Sasuke had pieced together, how much he suspected about the truth behind Saruto Haruno and her sudden appearance in Konoha. There were moments when he looked at her with such knowing intensity that it seemed impossible he didn't recognize something of Naruto in her eyes, in her expressions, in the way she challenged and supported him in equal measure. Yet if he did know or suspect, he wasn't forcing a confession. Instead, he seemed to be offering something precious. The space to be whoever she needed to be, to discover connections that might never have been possible in their original dynamic. They sat together as darkness fell completely, hands entwined, bodies gradually shifting closer until her head rested on his shoulder and his arm encircled her waist. Above them, stars emerged one by one, pinpricks of light against the velvet sky. The village behind them hummed with distant life, lanterns being lit, dinner being served, lives continuing in their ordinary patterns while here, at the lake's edge, something extraordinary had taken root. "We should head back," Sasuke said eventually, though he made no move to rise. "Before someone sends out a search party." Saruto laughed softly, the sound carrying across the still water. "Let them search. I'm comfortable right where I am." His arm tightened around her waist, the pressure sending another ripple of awareness through her. "As tempting as that is," he murmured against her hair, "I'd rather not have our first date interrupted by Kakashi appearing in a swirl of leaves to make inappropriate comments." "First date?" Saruto lifted her head, raising an eyebrow with a teasing smile. "Is that what this was? I thought it was just two people happening to sit by the same lake for hours." "If you prefer, I can make it more official," Sasuke replied, a hint of his old arrogance returning, though softened now with humor. "Saruto Haruno, would you do me the honor of accompanying me to dinner tomorrow night? Somewhere with fewer mosquitoes and more privacy than a public lakefront." The formal invitation, delivered with a playful gravity that was so unlike the Sasuke she'd known for years, made her laugh again, a bright, clear sound that seemed to illuminate the gathering darkness. "I suppose I could check my very busy schedule," she replied with mock seriousness. "I might be able to squeeze you in between, pretending to know sand jutsu, and avoiding awkward questions about my mysterious past." Sasuke's lips quirked in that almost smile that transformed his features. "I'll pick you up at 7, he said, rising to his feet with fluid grace and offering her his hand. "Wear something that won't cause Sakura to have an aneurysm when you borrow it." Saruto took his hand, allowing him to pull her upright. The motion brought them chest to chest, her smaller frame fitting against his with a complementary perfection that sent another wave of warmth through her. "No promises," she murmured, tilting her face up to his with deliberate invitation. "I might be developing a taste for shocking people." He accepted the invitation, lowering his head to capture her lips in a kiss that was both tender and possessive, his hand sliding to the small of her back to draw her closer. When they parted, both slightly breathless, the look in his eyes made her glad for his supportive grip. "In that case," he said, voice pitched low in a way that made her skin prickle pleasantly, "I look forward to being thoroughly shocked." They walked back toward the village hand in hand, the path illuminated by moonlight and the distant glow of Konoha's lights. With each step, Saruto felt herself moving further from the person she had been and closer to something new, not just a female version of Naruto, not just a temporary disguise, but a self with dimensions and possibilities she was only beginning to explore. As the streets of Konoha came into view, lamps glowing in windows and late-evening pedestrians moving about their business, Sasuke squeezed her hand one last time before reluctantly releasing it. Some habits died hard, and public displays of affection were still foreign territory for the reserved Uchiha. "Tomorrow at 7, he reminded her, eyes conveying what touch no longer could. "Don't be late." "Wouldn't dream of it," Saruto replied, already missing the warmth of his hand in hers, the solid presence of him at her side. "Sweet dreams, Sasuke." He gazed at her for a moment longer, something unreadable flickering in his expression. "They will be," he said softly, then turned and walked away, his figure gradually swallowed by the shadows between street lamps. Saruto watched him go, one hand pressed absently to her lips where the sensation of his kiss still lingered. The evening had brought revelations she couldn't have anticipated and feelings she was only beginning to understand. Tomorrow would bring new complexities, new questions, new possibilities. But for now, in this moment, she simply allowed herself to feel. The pleasant ache in her chest, the lingering warmth on her skin, the lightness in her step as she turned toward Sakura's apartment. Whatever happened next, whatever truths eventually emerged, whatever choices awaited, one thing had become beautifully, irrevocably clear. There was no more distance left between them. And that, perhaps, was the greatest transformation of all.